It all started in 2014 when I was struck by a series of illnesses. I couldn't walk, I was in so much pain, and I just laid in bed watching my Westerns, and what made me feel better was watching my John Wayne films. So I sat down and wrote the story, gave it to my husband, Gregory Crosby, who's an amazing screenwriter, and he put the story together, and that's how Duke came about. I wanted to bring something very vulnerable and special to this role. I'm known all over the world as Spice Williams-Crosby, but my real birth name is Marcie. And Marcie was a very frayed, insecure child. And that's why I liked using my real name as this, because I needed to find that core, that vulnerable side of me that I actually felt in bed for 6 months, scared if I could ever walk and get past the pain. I'm not a crier, but I had to prepare for this. What makes me cry is if I see a young man walk an old lady across the street. I'm like, oh my God, there's hope for the human race. That beautiful things make me cry. But I'm not a crier when I get angry, and I had to find that. I had to find that absolute frustration of my wits' ends. Where am I gonna go from here?
Both Spice and I are tremendous John Wayne fans, and I think the film benefited from that because we have a very deep knowledge of his body of work. It's what opens our film. John Wayne often paid tribute to his heroes and mentors. There was a gesture that he used that John Wayne put in the closing image of The Searchers. And we utilize that in our film, and then we get it to pay off, I think, very well for us, both at the beginning and the ending of our film. So keep an eye out for that.
As a musician and composer, sometimes I struggle over compositions. But for this film, Duke, this composition came quite easy. And I called it Open Prairie. I wanted it to feel like I was on a horse riding through the open prairie, and it was just me and God. So we chose each of these actors. It came easy, but we chose them very carefully based off their own persona. And I couldn't think of anyone who could play the part of Kate Strong any better than JODY JARESS.
Oh, what I wanted to bring to the part of the mother of these two amazing adult children was honesty, some truth, reality. When it comes time for one to pass on, you don't always get the opportunity to say to your children or to people that you care about and loved ones how you feel about them. And we all are going to have to experience this at some time or another. And so my thing is kind of hoping that this film tells people to talk to the people you care about sooner rather than later, because you may not have the opportunity to say the things you want to say.
Then it was, oh, Gregory, who do we get to play John Wayne? And he immediately said, oh, get Anthony de LONGIS.
They have great affection for John Wayne, as do I. And she called me up and said, can you imitate John Wayne? And I said, well, no one could really imitate John Wayne, but you know, I passed muster, and I asked her who's directing. And she said, well, at the moment, no one. And a few days later, they asked me if I would like to direct as well. So I was very excited.
We needed a guy that could play a very arrogant, my brother. And I ran into Michael HEGEDUS in the gym, and I'm like, hey, would you want to play really an arrogant jerk? And he's like, oh, yeah. So he was next.
Playing this character was a stretch because I am so not the guy that believed in anti-war, anti-Vietnam. So I had to bring a believability as to who this person was in relation to that time this torment over a father who was drunk and abusive, and a need to protect his mom.
Finally, I wanted the hospice nurse to be a wonderful, loving, compassionate young boy who could learn from Kate Strong. And throughout our piece, this hospice nurse actually pulls everybody together.
I learned about this film from talking with Spice and us talking about different stories and different heroes that we have in our lives and in the entertainment industry, how we kind of derive and pull from different people that we enjoy, their stories that they tell. And she told me about John Wayne. Going into this project, I knew very little about John Wayne myself, and seeing how excited Spice was about this project and talking to me more and more, scripting and outlines and going over more of the characters, I had to dive into some research myself. And I was amazed to see all of the different things that this man did all throughout his life.
His body of work inspires me as an artist, as an actor, as a director, as a performer.
Well, those I think that grew up with him, are going to have a different view, a different idea of how they see him.
For me, my father was my hero. I was born and raised on a ranch, and then my father died, and I was lost, and I adopted John Wayne as my hero. And I loved all his code of ethics, his morals, his standards. There's a line that I say in this, John Wayne is a man, and he had his faults. No one's perfect. And I realized, wait a minute, John Wayne is perfect for me. I had to find some of his faults.
Duke was who he was. He's a real person. And he's not perfect, but he sure gave people a lot of hope.
A man's man. And very likable always to me. And he was so much fun with Maureen O'Hara in all those great old movies. He's a very cool guy.
I swear to God, this looks like my dad when I was the age of starting to go to movies. And when I saw John Wayne then in a movie, the war movies at that time, not really the cowboy movies, but the war movies, I thought, that's my dad. And I knew it wasn't, but when I went to the movies, I thought, there's my hero, there's my daddy up there. So that was my introduction to John Wayne.
It's amazing how the littlest things that you do can become larger than life. And I feel like we accomplished that. And I feel like in this film, you really get to see the effect that someone who is larger than life has on specific people in many different ways.
It's really interesting how everything works. And I really wrote this story based off my experience in bed and feeling safe under the John Wayne films, and kept me sane, kept me happy while I was in so much pain. But then we finished the film December 20th, and 5 days later, on Christmas Eve, I found out that my real brother, Jeff Williams, was on life support for 2 months. And then it was time to say goodbye to him because he was going to die when they took him off life support. Of which we did, and I was in total acceptance, and I understood there was nothing I could do, and it was very sad. But when we went into post-production, and I saw this argument between Michael and myself in this kitchen, it made me remember that my real brother and I had the same argument when I was 12 years old. Because my dad was so much like John Wayne, and my real brother hated the Vietnam War and hated John Wayne and was not real good friends with my dad. And I was like almost reliving this argument. Only there was never a resolution with my real brother. But in this film, there was a resolution.
One of the things when I read the story, it's a story about end of days, and a passing of a mother and her 2 children. And this is the kind of goodbye that very few of us get in real life.
I'm hoping that the viewing audience will be feeling all of our emotions that we all have been able to present in this film and relate to it. Everybody's lost somebody. Everybody has a brother or a sister they either get along with or they don't get along with. We open up with fear and we close with hope. So that's what I want for the viewing audience, to feel all of our fears and emotions, and then to take this ride with us up into heaven with the feelings of hope.